This is my custom-made mouse. It has 22 customizable keys, mechanical switches, and it's fully vertical. But is it any good?
And that's it for my iPhone Do impression. Today I want to show you my custom-made mouse. And I've seen lots of videos about custom keyboards, but not that many about mice. I had planned for this to be a tutorial of sorts, but the parts that I used are not for sale anymore. So I'll just show you how my mouse came to be, and hopefully this can spark some ideas for you. And you might be asking why I wanted to make my own mouse. Well, after years of working on the computer for long hours, my hands, my back, my neck, and wrists started to hurt. So I did the sensible thing to do, which is work less. No, well, maybe a little after I got a girlfriend, but no. Over the last several years, I've slowly made my workstation more and more ergonomic, from an adjustable height desks to all kinds of keyboards. If you care to know more about what I've discovered about ergonomics in general, subscribe because I'm planning on making a video about that soon. But anyway, back to the mouse. After long days, my wrists would be in a lot of pain, and not the tingling associated with carpal tunnel, just pain on the wrist. When I was starting out, I always saw editors at different studios use trackballs instead of mice, so I decided to get one, and it was a bit less precise at first, but after a while I got used to it, and indeed, I had no more wrist pain, which was great. I'm a big fan of macros and keyboard shortcuts, so eventually I got this trackball from KeyMouse, which is half trackball, half keyboard, which allowed me to add my most used key combinations. I was a really happy camper for a year or two, but then I started to get pain again, but this time on my thumb, because that's what I was using now, so come on. I tried a few more things. I know a lot of artists like using Wacom tablets instead of a mouse, but I could never get used to it. Eventually, I landed on a vertical mouse, which helped a lot, but I still had some pain. It occurred to me that this vertical mouse is not actually fully vertical, so I thought maybe like a joystick would be better, but if you ever use a gamepad to play a first-person shooter, you know it's not as precise as a mouse. So how about a joystick-shaped mouse? Well, this is the only one I could find. The problem was that it doesn't have a scroll wheel, which I pretty much need for all the programs that I use. So I reached what at the time seemed like the only logical conclusion, which is I have to make my own. I thought there would be more tutorials or guides on making your own mouse. I found tons of guides for keyboards for sure, but none for mice. And the only sensors I could find were bare, so I would have to program the optical tracking or the electronics, and so no. I was about to give up when somehow I remember that the KeyMouse track that I have was 3D printed, and on their website they also have spare parts. I checked out to see if they had something that I could use, and voila! They had all the parts that they used to make their own device, including buttons, sensors, and their own custom-made PCB, which meant I wouldn't have to worry about the electronics, just the physical design, which is exactly what I wanted. So I ordered all the electronic parts, and it was time for me to design and 3D print different shapes to test out. Too uncomfortable, too small for the components, too phallic, etc, etc, etc. Their PCB is actually pretty big, so my design could never be super compact. So I might as well add macro buttons again. It took a lot of experimentation to find a good layout where I could reach the buttons easily, but also that I could physically build and connect all the switches. Eventually I landed on this design, which, without buttons, reminds me a bit of abandoned Soviet-era housing. Next, I installed the switches and the cables, and taped it all together so I could test everything, and then ran all the cables to the bottom where I put a box with a PCB and sensor. My first version was awful because of the angle and location of the sensor. It worked fine when I moved the whole hand, but the moment my wrist rotated, the pointer would move in the opposite direction, which was very trippy. But I fixed that, and the next thing to find out was what was the most comfortable angle for the handle. I made several inserts that went between the box and the handle. Each insert had a different angle, both side to side and back and forth. That allowed me to try several angles quickly without rebuilding the whole thing. Over the next week or two, I tested each insert, and some I knew after less than an hour that they wouldn't work. Some others seemed fine at first but got tiresome after 3 hours, etc, etc. Eventually, I found out that the most comfortable angle for me is straight up. Great. Well, at least I know for sure. Once I knew the right angle for me, which was a right angle, I went for the final design, implementing everything that I learned from the multiple tests. I ditched the box at the bottom so that my hand was closer to the surface, and I moved the PCB vertically at the far end of the device. I designed this rotating piece for the sensor so that I can adjust the angle if necessary. Since the whole thing is pretty heavy compared to most mice, if not all mice, I found these feet, which are meant to have super low friction. I also had to change the mouse pad, not only because I needed a bigger one, but also because my previous pad was soft and the mouse just sank into it with the weight. So how does the mouse work? It's actually pretty good, but with some caveats. I really like using cherry switches for clicking, and since I'm using KeyMouse's PCB, I get to use their software, which allows me to assign the buttons to any key or mouse press. I assign 3 buttons where my fingers rest to the regular mouse clicks. Most of the applications I use need the scroll wheel for zooming and moving around. I use 3 buttons to simulate the wheel. Pushing these 2 is like moving the wheel up or down 1 notch. Or I can push this button and then moving the mouse itself becomes the scroll, so I can quickly move up or down in a document, like this. Whee! Honestly, I do like this much better than the wheel, and I miss it when I use a regular mouse. The rest of the buttons are assigned to things I do over and over, like copy pasting, switching and closing programs, switching and closing tabs, etc, etc. The mouse is too heavy to lift around, but thankfully the KeyMouse software lets me assign a button that stops the mouse sensor. That way I can reposition it without lifting it. As far as the goal of reducing wrist pain, it does a great job. Out of all the mice I have, this is the one I can use the longest without the splints for my wrists, which is great. And the fact that I have a lot of shortcuts reduces both the amount of movements I have to do between the mouse and the keyboard and the strain of doing the key combinations. And I know it sounds ridiculous because they're such small movements, but if you add them up over the hours and hours I spend doing them, you start feeling every little thing. The caveats, as you might imagine, come from the weight. It weighs a chunky 3 to 4 times as much as the mice on the lighter end of the spectrum. The low friction feet and the mousepad help a lot, and it doesn't actually cause problems in terms of pain or anything like that. The problem comes when you need to do precise movements quickly because more mass just makes stopping and changing directions harder. I do have a button assigned to reduce the sensitivity, which allows me to do very fine movements, but it's just not as fast as with a small mouse. So obviously you can't really game on this, but also working on masks for VFX or other tasks that need a lot of precision can be frustrating. What's worked best for me has been to have 3 mice that I alternate. I have this one for general tasks, documents, web browsing, etc. I also have a regular mouse that's super light, and this one I use when I need fast and precise movements. Finally, I still have my Logitech vertical mouse, which sits between the other 2 in both precision and comfort. I find that alternating between the 3 of them lets my wrists take a break from being in the same position all the time, and that has made a huge difference. In the 2 or 3 years since I've been doing that, I've only occasionally gotten wrist pain, and not nearly as bad as it used to be. One of the ideas to make my mouse lighter could be to use the guts from an existing mouse and create my own outer shell. Honestly, this probably would have been much easier if I had done this since the beginning, but you know, hindsight is 20/20, and I really wanted those macro keys. The other thing that has helped a lot are these splints. These splints, which I also made myself because the commercial ones that I got had the support on the bottom, so they kept bumping on the keyboard and the mouse when I tried to use them. So anyway, I'll talk more about these in the more general video about ergonomics I'm planning on making soon, so subscribe, so that way you won't miss it. And if I do decide to modify an existing mouse to make my own, that's gonna be in the channel as well, so you don't wanna miss that either. I hope this video was interesting. Check out the rest of the channel. I have other fun stuff that I've made, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Bye.